Hi, and welcome to this week's Rugby Bits podcast as we preview the Springboks versus the All Blacks. And we again have our New Zealand Rugby Bits correspondent, Jamie Wall, with us. Jamie, how you doing, mate?
Kia ora, brother. Yes, I'm doing great. It's great to be here in Cape Town and enjoying what this beautiful city has to offer. Yeah.
Lovely. And Clippies and Coke, you've been enjoying them? Couple, 1, 2, 3, every now and then?
Oh, you've noticed that, have you? Yes, I have been. I want whenever I go to a place, I like to get myself into the culture and meet new people, and it's been a fantastic trip for that. I've met a lot of great people and had a few clippies along the way. But obviously, if you've been following me on Twitter, just want to let everyone know that I'm having a great time because I am.
You are.
It's not. I'm not a. It's not a gag. It's not a gag or anything like that. I literally like having a great time, and I want to tweet about it because it's just been an awesome trip so far.
Awesome. So good to hear. And it doesn't look like you taking the piss. It looks like you're generally having a good time. We're going to jump straight into it. Both the Springboks and the All Blacks announced their squads today. We can start off with you. The All Blacks announced nice and early. I saw that they asked Razor if he was considering going with a 6-2 bench, and he piped that he might even consider doing an 8-0. I know it was a bit of a joke, but your thoughts on the All Black squad?
Yeah, it's pretty surprising, to be honest. I wasn't expecting as many changes. Like there was going to be a couple that we'd heard about due to a couple of injuries, but I guess the biggest talking point would be Sititi, the young fella from the Chiefs, starting at 6, and I guess he's probably a guy that you guys wouldn't know that much about because he's only had one season in Super Rugby, but he had a very, very, very strong season. He was actually at the start of the season, he was playing in the Blues development team. And then he was picked up from them into the Chiefs and ended up, I think, starting pretty much every game at number 8. But that's the thing. He was a number 8. He hasn't played blindside other than a couple of games last year for North Harbour in the NPC. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he adjusts to that position. He is there because Ethan Blackadder got injured. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Ethan Blackadder's effort last week. So that's probably the biggest one because he is an unknown quantity, not just for you guys, but for us as well, because he's now playing out of position. So how that affects that loose forward balance. One thing I am excited about is he is a ball carrier. He's very strong, very fast. And it's one thing I've been pretty hot on with the All Black team is that they don't have enough of those guys in the team to break the line and do stuff. So I hope he goes really well, because if he can sort of play at the level that he was in Super Rugby, he's going to be a very good test player. I think the other big one is Cortez Rutama starting at halfback. This is easily the biggest test, probably the biggest game that he's ever played in. The explanation as to why TJ and Jordan Barrett have been moved to the bench was to sort of add some extra experience. You guys can read into that what you will regarding what he's seen from the Springboks like last week, and the much talked about sort of last 20 minutes in which one team shifted up a gear and the other one shifted down. To me, it feels like a very reactionary move, which is not something the All Blacks usually do. So yeah, those guys going to the bench, I mean, I don't disagree with it. It's just more kind of the message that it sends out is like, okay, we're now picking based on who we're playing rather than who we have. And then the wingers, the back threes changed around. Will Jordan at fullback? No, I don't know about this. A lot of people have been really pressing his case because he plays fullback for the Crusaders in Super Rugby, but he's only ever played one test at fullback, and that was last year. It did not go very well, and that was against a bad Wallabies team as well. So hopefully he has adjusted his game, because the he's going to have to take a lot of high balls. And then the wingers, you have Talia and Reese, who are both guys. I don't think the All Blacks are losing an awful lot there, although Caleb Clark was really good last weekend, and it's just a shame. It's more a shame for him because he's sort of this close to really nailing down that position. If he'd backed up last week with another strong game this week, it's like, okay, this is our guy going forward. But he just seems to get injured just at the absolute wrong possible time. And then the other one is on the bench. Just I mean, it's more sort of significant because Dalton Papali'i is fit and available, and that was confirmed this morning. But they've gone with Luke Jacobson instead. Just interesting to see how that sort of pans out because Dalton Papali'i was the starting, flanker going into this series, and now he's out. Now he's not in the squad. So interesting to know what their reasoning is behind that, and also how those guys play.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna start off with that loose trio. For me, just when it was named, it just looks a little bit out of shape. Like Ardie Savea, many would argue that he could probably do a better job on the side of the scrum, and he was playing at 8 just to kind of cover a few gaps. And as we all know, Sititi is an 8. I know, like, depends on what you do with Ardie and Sam Cane with the open side and blind side, but I think to manage that would be relatively easy. It's just the loose trio looks balanced, it just looks out of place. And I think that's a bit of a concern. Did watch a bit of Sititi. I didn't realize that he was in the training squad, the Blues training squad at the beginning of the season. So that's quite a season he's had. He's absolutely, put the hammer down, and he's the one he's the reason why Tutu's not with the All Blacks. Many would think. So that's very interesting. I want to talk about Cortez Ratama. You're right in terms the All Blacks. We've never known the All Blacks to be dictated to. They normally do the dictating, and a knee-jerk reaction to put some experience on the bench, to counteract the bomb squad seems a little bit weird. I think, and you're right, it's his biggest test match and biggest game of his life. It's going to be huge, and he's going to be under the pump. So that's quite interesting for me because it just doesn't look right. I haven't seen enough of him either, to be fair. So, maybe I'm just because I don't really know him. And Mark Tiller on the left wing, are you comfortable with that? I'm very big on keeping wings where they belong. Do you think that's going to be a good move? I can't remember if he's played 11 too much, but I know he's mostly on the right wing.
Yeah, that's a good observation actually. But he is relatively interchangeable, and I feel like he's probably going to be given the commission to come infield and work off the ruck like he was with the Blues. Whereas I think Reece, who can also fulfill that role pretty well because he's done it for the All Blacks before, will be out wide as the sort of finishing wing. I think it's just more due to the fact that Reece is a right winger and that they can accommodate guys, and it's just more kind of down to injuries, and that really the way the All Blacks play, it's just not right now. It doesn't really feel like too much of a stretch because they all sort of rotate around. And if you saw, was it Clark's first try last week? Jordan was the one who gave him the pass. So it's not strictly just on one side of the field. It's more just they're working as in tandem on attack. So I'm not really that bothered about what number they're wearing on their backs because they're fulfilling a number of roles in the backfield there.
Not like you don't have a world-class 11 in Rieko Ioane on the field, but we'll make that chat for another day. Jordie Barrett on the bench. I think Will Jordan definitely on attack, and just like Rieko, like I think they're so brilliant on attack. I'm a little bit worried on defense, and I'm worried a bit about Will Jordan on defense. And I knew he played a test at 15. I didn't realize it was against the Wallabies and was only one. I thought he had a couple more. But that seems like a very interesting move. He's great under the high ball, but on defense, positionally, I'm not sure if he's going to be like as sharp as he should be. Jordie Barrett being benched seems strange, and maybe it is to counteract the bomb squad, but surely he's not being dropped because of his last 10 minutes last week.
No. I mean, I think they made it quite clear, which is, again, not something the All Blacks usually do, is sort of why things are made, especially something like this. But they've said it's specifically so they can have that experience at the back end of the game. Again, I don't disagree with it. It's just a bit strange for us to hear that from an All Black team. If it works out, he's going to be, hailed as a genius, and that that they've managed to outcoach another team, which is something that the All Blacks kind of need to start achieving. That they seem to be going in with a smarter game plan, and that they're one step ahead. Because at the moment, it feels like Rassie Erasmus and the Springboks are one step ahead of them. And so I think if they can get this this victory, and it is built off a strong, business end of a game, then that'll send a pretty significant message to the rest of the rugby world.
Yeah, and they need to. I think not only for the rugby world, more for their fans and back home. Anything else you want to close off on the All Black squad before we jump on the Springboks?
I mean, I think it's a big game for the midfield as well. I thought Jordie was really good last weekend. They really need him to be the kind of fulcrum in the middle there for the attack. They need him to be able to back up with another big game this weekend as well. So I think Rico it's not like he had this sort of highlight reel out of last week, but I think that's always going to be an area where there's going to be some question marks going forward until those guys can, really establish themselves as a good partnership. I believe it is, but I think that's probably the one where the game could potentially be won and lost in that channel.
Yeah, and it's big. I mean, those two are ridiculously good. Rico had the most post-contact meters in the opening test. He's an incredible attacking player. Jordie's brilliant. I mean, you've got the best of both worlds there. You've got like two players that are really big that can play to the ball and two players that can sort of take the outside gap. So yeah, it will be interesting. Moving on to the Springboks. So there's been a few changes, and I want to ask you, which one are you most surprised about and which one are you most worried about?
Surprised about 10. I thought that Sasha was great last week. I don't know why you'd want to change that. He's clearly in hot form, and he clearly looks like a confidence player as well. Nothing against Andre Pollard. He's a great player and everything, but I just thought they would have stuck with a guy who clearly does not have an issue with the big stage at all, because it wasn't just on the field, it was afterwards as well when we were doing the interviews and things. He just sort of strutted in looking like he owned the place, and he is great. Was a 20, 21-year-old kid to have that kind of attitude is awesome. So that's the one I'm most surprised about. I'm not sure. Was Fussy injured or like what was that? Was it straight swap or
straight swap?
No,
it's quite an interesting one because Fussy is
I'm
completely out the squad now.
I'm kind of surprised by that, because I feel like Rassie Erasmus essentially retired Willie LaRue last week by what he said in that press conference. So that's another surprise as well. But yeah, I think that they haven't really lost much with what they've done from an All Black point of view. I don't think any of the All Blacks or New Zealand supporters are going to be looking at that team and saying like, oh great, they've done this and that, because again, Pollard's a great player. They're not losing anything. It might slightly adjust the way they play, but I don't see any reason why they can't still be a great attacking team scoring tries with Pollard out there. It's just that I just figured that, Sasha Feinberg and Nomazulu's going to sell them a lot of jerseys. So, that's use the kid.
Yeah, he's good, and Fussy as well. It's quite interesting, but had this change been made 4 years ago, even when Rassie was coach initially, it would more be seen as like players being dropped. But it's so interesting how that works. Like when players are not playing, either depending on the form of the team, it's whether players are being dropped or whether players are being rested. It's quite an interesting one. And I think, like Rassie's been big on sorting out to make sure that there are like 2 matchday 23s that can play. I think during the World Cup, we're probably one of the hardest teams to analyze just because we had 2 teams with 2 different game plans. It seems like he's growing on that a little bit. I'm very surprised Fussy didn't get a look in. He made his test debut at 11, if I'm not mistaken. So there was that. Makazole Mapimpi was also an option. And both Cheslin Colby and Kirtley Arendse can play 11. Obviously, we know Kirtley can play 11, but they can play on both sides. So Mapimpi, they said, is not available because of the birth of his child. So that's understandable. But for them not to have Fussy, there's something cooking there. So the one thing I think that Rassie and the management do have is a good relationship with the players, like in that they can have these conversations and everyone knows where they stand. But for Fassi, there was a long break between test matches for him. You know, he made his debut and then he was out of the mix for a while, and everyone thought that was his international career over. So that is also why I'm quite interested by it. But our loose trio, Sia Kolisi, Pieter-Steph du Toit, and Jasper Visser. I mean, you guys have seen it before, and I mean, Jasper laid down the law last week in his first test back, which is so good. But you guys must be sick of Pieter-Steph du Toit by now.
Oh, I never get sick of watching great players play, and he is a great player. You know, I think that he's a guy who also plays his best rugby at the highest level as well, which is something that's what you want to see in test matches. You know, if you're going to beat the Springboks, you want them to be as good as possible, because and he's a guy who just, for us, I guess, just really embodies what the Springboks are and what they represent. So I mean, I don't think I'll ever get sick of it. I mean, I will say one thing though. It's Kolisi's, whoever's doing his cosmetic surgery seems to have done a fantastic job this week after all of the controversy about that. Turns out it wasn't as bad as we thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a South African online rugby community maybe just sort of running with that one a little bit further than they should have. But it was interesting in the press conference this morning. I'm not sure if you saw, but Rassie Erasmus did have some stuff to say about that, about Sam Cane, and it was quite cunning what he did there. I enjoyed what he had to say about that, about praising Sam Cane and saying that they're great mates, but he should have got a yellow card.
Yeah,
just chucking that in there. So I like that little bit of mind games there, but at the same time, it was like, can we just sort of get out of the habit of just microanalyzing any time anyone's shoulder goes near their face? I know it's a fool's errand to try and ask people not to do that, but I mean, it was a bit overblown what happened there, especially considering that he's not even injured after all that. So yeah, that's my take on that one.
Yeah, very interesting. I will say something. This has been the best and the worst time on social media. It's been crazy from South African fans, mostly, like so much, like people learning new laws. I was saying that it's good and bad because, you get to learn new laws. People are still freaking out about the Apelele Fassi yellow card, which was a straight yellow. It's not even debate. It wasn't even gray area. He was just comfortably offside. And then the Sam Cane, Sia Kolisi thing, like, fair enough. We were getting sort of grainy social media footage, but it didn't look as clear cut as people were making out. Like, you can have a collision in rugby and have a facial injury from a legal tackle. I do think that there was something in it. The fact that it wasn't looked at, the fact that Mbonambi's trial wasn't looked at was all, it all adds fuel to the fire. So, but it's been a good week and it's been fun. And I'll tell you something, it's very clear that this is the greatest like rugby rivalry out there. And I know, like, when were playing against Ireland, and like, this has been off the charts. And I think just purely because of the Rugby Championship and the Tri-Nations and the history we had, which has been great. You guys are going to have to deal with some new players off the bench, some new sort of players that you've seen before, but a new change, a 5-3, Jaden Hendrickson, Sasha Feinberg, and Gormazulu and Lucanio, the backs on there. They are covering 10, 12, 13, 14, and 9 comfortably with that bench, let alone the players that are starting. But I think the big one is the Springboks don't really have an out-and-out lock on the bench. And we saw what happened when Ruan Nokia went off in the opening test, that the lineout just basically went to shit. That's obviously got to be a target area for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lineout was a target area last week as well. And to the All Blacks' credit, the lineout went pretty smoothly. I don't think they sort of won any big turnovers off it, but if you remember, Caleb Clark's second try was first phase off a line-out move, even though it was a little bit of a dusty kind of transition out of it. But it was a real worry going into this series because it's been very patchy going in. So any help that the All Blacks can get in that area, they will target. And of course, they did score the first try off line-out drive. So I think the biggest issue for the All Blacks is not so much the line-out defence or competing, it's what happens afterwards, because you saw those last two tries. were essentially the same. The ones that Quagga Smith and Grant Williams scored, it was the same, exactly the same thing that happened. It was like a line-out drive, went down. They can't just be like, great, we've stopped them here, now we'll just D up, because the Springboks are good enough to take advantage of the fact they're still 5 meters out from the line. So that to me is more of a worry than the set piece itself. It's like sort of what happens a couple of phases later.
Yeah. Just interesting, we're talking about like lineouts, but the hookers, I mean, Cody Taylor's starting and Safa Amour is on the bench. Your hooker depth, how's it looking at the moment?
Oh, it's like paddling pool at the moment. It's yeah, it's not great because the next cab off the rank is George Bell, who is a guy who's not even starting for the Crusaders. So that says a lot at the moment. He's very inexperienced. I would not trust him at all in a test like this, which obviously why he's not there. But at the same time, Almoa is known as like a good hard ball runner and almost an extra loose forward at times. But the biggest criticism of him is that his line-out throwing is bad. It's not even like it's not a debate. There's been too many games with the Hurricanes and games with the All Blacks where he's come on and the line-out hasn't worked. In Wellington, it was a crucial play, and that loss to Argentina was a botch line-out. So to be honest, if I was going to bomb squad the All Blacks, Taylor would be the one sitting on the bench, because he's the guy you want to come on, because he's done it all before. He's played however 80 odd tests, and he knows how to throw the ball into a 5 meter line on his own line, and knows what to do around the field in a very tight game, because he's done it all before. Moore hasn't. So I've always found that selection to be a little bit odd, because surely you simply go to Super Rugby and find the most reliable lineout thrower under pressure, and he's your backup. And if you need him to close the game out because Taylor's legs can't go more than 60 minutes, like you just need someone to literally throw the ball into line, because it's so crucial at that stage of the game.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And we saw like when Nortje went off with Springboks, when those lineouts were going all over the show, Malcolm Marks came on. I was getting a bit nervous there. It was still a tight game. It was very challenging, and it was amazing when Nortje came back on, how everything just settled down. And it's just all come from a solid lineout. And you're right, like you have to have someone that's got really good darts, and especially at the end of the game, especially when you're under pressure, which the All Blacks are not used to at the moment. It's something that the team and the coaching staff have to get used to, and look at managing. Yeah. Before we wrap up, what head-to-head are you most looking forward to in terms of the test match in Cape Town on Saturday?
That's a tough one. I think for me, and I remember I brought this up, I think the first time we ever talked, is Jordie and Dialende, and the fact that they were two very similar players, both big, tall guys, big, strong, straight runners, have also more stuff in their arsenal, but those two going at each other, and I mentioned it before about how that channel can potentially win and lose a game. And Jordie picked off Dialende last weekend for that try that should have set the All Blacks off onto a win. And just that little cut and thrust, and the moment one of them just makes a slight mistake, the other one's just going to. So that to me is the biggest battle in this one. I think Rutterman's got a huge 50, 60 minutes ahead of him, and we're going to know what sort of player he is. You guys are going to know a lot more about him by the end of that. I mean, the one thing I would say is that during Super Rugby, there was sort of no question of him ever not making the All Blacks. Like he had that tag on him ever since he left school, and he did look very comfortable when the first time he came on in a Test match against England at Eden Park, which was a tight, Test match, and he looked like right at home there. So I think he's going to go okay, but yeah, I think that midfield battle again, like that's the one for me.
Yeah, my one is going to be a bit of a bench battle. I think Jaden Hendrickson also at 9. Funny thing, Jaden Hendrickson, TJ Perinara, coming on, they'll roughly have the same amount of time against each other. The whole reason why Razors, put the experience on the bench is to counteract the Springboks and the bomb squad. And Jaden hasn't played in a while. When before he got injured, it took me a while. It didn't take me long to get to warm up to him, but I had a long time where I didn't quite trust him. I just didn't think that he was the right fit. And then he had 2 test matches where every kick he made was on the money. So it was then that I realized that, that's probably who we're after. And then we changed our attacking style. And then he got injured. So I'm interested to see how he does when he comes back up against TJ, because TJ very clearly, and TJ, Anton Leonard-Brown and Jordan Barrett very clearly have a mandate to just shut the guys down, just pester the shit out of them. So yeah, that's gonna be a good one. But went for a good one. The winner wins the Freedom Cup, and if the
Yes.
and if the Springboks win with a bonus point, they'll actually wrap up the rugby championship on home soil, which I'm quite looking forward to.
Yeah, the Freedom Cup, the most breakable looking trophy in world sport. It just
Yes.
looks so fragile. Every time anyone picks it up, just be careful, please.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, well, that was awesome. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been great having you join us for this entirety of this test series. I hope you've booked your tickets for the big All Black tour in a couple of years' time.
Oh, well, it's not official yet, but we're hoping to be able to rubber stamp that by the end of the week. But yes, it does sound like it's happening. So in a couple of years, I'll come back. I'll bring a bunch of other friends with me, and we'll be able to get around the country and come do this in person, hopefully, and have a bit of a braai and some clippies and chat some great footy talk.
Absolutely. And the more time you spend in Cape Town, you'll get onto some pretty good red wine as well. Well, for those of you that don't know, Jamie Wall from New Zealand, written a couple of books. Please follow him on social media. He's been having an absolute party in Cape Town. All the best for the weekend, Jamie, and we'll catch up with you soon.